Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. When you think of the Dallas Cowboys of the 1990s, if you think of any player in particular, it's probably this guy right here. Emmitt Smith is one of the greatest running backs of all time, and is one of the greatest football players of all time, period. I'd be here for days if I listed every single accolade that Smith won in his career. 8 Pro Bowl appearances, 4 first-team All-Pro nominations, 3 Super Bowl championships, including the MVP of Super Bowl 28, an MVP award from 1993, and of course, the all-time leader in NFL history in rushing yards and touchdowns, with those records being unlikely to ever be broken. It's almost impossible to imagine the Cowboys without Emmitt Smith. However, he was dangerously close to not getting drafted by Dallas at all. How close was it? The Cowboys were literally on the phone with another prospect ready to draft someone else. A matter of seconds changed NFL history forever. And this is the crazy story behind Emmitt Smith almost never joining the Cowboys. Before I talk about the NFL draft, we need some context with the 1989 Cowboys, because they were really, really bad. You can make the argument that in the post-merger era, they're one of the worst teams of all time. They went 1-15, finishing with the worst record in football. They had the worst offense in football, averaging just 12.8 points per game. They had a bottom 5 defense, and finished the season with the worst point differential in the league, and ended the season on a 7-game losing streak. The Cowboys needed help just about everywhere, with the exception of quarterback, since they spent the first overall pick in the 1989 NFL Draft on Troy Aikman. Just about every single position was up for grabs with regards to what they'd be spending the first round pick on in 1990. And one of those positions was outside linebacker. In the middle, you had Eugene Lockhart, who was coming off of a great year for the Cowboys, where he was one of the lone bright spots and was named the second-team All-Pro. But on the outside, you had Jack Del Rio and Ken Norton Jr., who weren't doing much of anything. Del Rio was a journeyman on his 3rd team in 5 years, and Norton was still a young linebacker who wasn't doing a whole lot. In fact, Johnson was so unsure of those 2 players and had such little confidence in them at the time that toward the end of the season, he began a rotational system where Norton and Del Rio would play the 1st and 3rd quarters, and Jesse Solomon and David Howard would play the 2nd and 4th quarters. Dallas's defense was in a bit of a flux that year, and you can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But they needed a difference maker on defense. They needed a playmaker badly, and the man they were eyeing was right in their home state. He was a man by the name of James Francis out of Baylor. He was a beast not just on defense, but on special teams as well. Francis had 344 tackles in his career, and was named the first-team All-America selection as a senior, when in 1989, he blocked an NCAA record 8 kicks. Imagine a player who could block a kick, on average, twice every 3 games, and that was Francis. The Cowboys already knew a bit about him, seeing as his brother Ron also went to Baylor and was the starting quarterback on the Cowboys. Dallas had the 21st pick in the draft, since they lost what would have been the 1st overall pick after taking quarterback Steve Walsh in the 1989 NFL Supplemental Draft. They knew that if they wanted to get Francis, they would have to trade up. And with that, they began calling. Before we go any further, you might be asking yourself why they were looking on the defensive side of the ball primarily and not at running back, since they were awful running the ball, and since the top 18 players in rushing yards during the 1989 season were either 1st or 2nd round picks. Obviously, in the middle of 1989, the Cowboys sent shockwaves around the league by trading away Herschel Walker to the Minnesota Vikings for a treasure trove of picks. In the long run, this move would create a dynasty, but in the short term it left the Cowboys with arguably the worst running game in football. The team's leading rusher that year was Paul Palmer, who had just 446 yards and 2 touchdowns, and would never play in the NFL again after that season. As the team's starting running back in 3 of the team's final 4 games, Palmer had fewer than 20 rushing yards, which is obviously terrible. So again, why weren't they looking at a running back? Simple. They already spent multiple draft picks on one. 3 days before the draft, Dallas made a trade with San Francisco, giving the 49ers their 2nd and 3rd round picks, and receiving a few picks in return, plus former 1st round pick Terrence Flagler. Flagler hadn't done a whole lot in San Francisco, running for just 145 yards over 3 seasons, but he was playing behind one of the best in all of football in Roger Craig, so his opportunities were limited. The Cowboys liked him a lot. They believed he was the future, and that's why the Cowboys were looking to spend their 1st round pick on the defensive side of the ball. Dallas really wanted James Francis, so much so that scouting director Dick Mansberger said, He's a can't miss if that's a possibility. I would like to have him not miss here. With that, as Francis slid out of the top 10, Dallas was trying everything they could to get back up. They tried calling the Los Angeles Raiders. The deal would have given Dallas picks 11 and 37 while giving up picks 21 and 26. However, the Raiders wanted an additional third-round pick in 1991. That was too steep of an asking price, so the Cowboys declined the deal. With pick number 11, the Raiders chose defensive end Emmitt Smith, meaning that Francis was still on the board at pick number 12. The Kansas City Chiefs had the 13th pick. Dallas called up Kansas City, and the two sides struck a deal. Dallas and Kansas City would swap first and second round picks, meaning that the Cowboys would get picks 13 and 40, and the Chiefs would get picks 21 and 26. It was an incredibly reasonable price, and General Manager Tik Tok agreed to the trade on one condition. That condition was that James Francis was still on the board at pick number 13. If he was there, the deal would be made, and the Cowboys would draft him. If he wasn't there, the deal was off. What happened next changed NFL history forever. When the Cowboys made that contingent trade, General Manager Tik Tok called up James Francis. Francis knew that the Cowboys were interested in him during the pre-draft process, so he wasn't entirely surprised when Dallas called him. Schramm told him that he was going to be a Dallas Cowboy. The Cowboys were going to take him with pick number 13. Then, Schramm and Francis looked up at their respective televisions to see Commissioner Paul Tagliabue announce the 12th pick. Turns out, the Cincinnati Bengals took Francis. Schramm ended the conversation, saying it looks like you're a Bengal now, and Schramm wished him luck and hung up. Just like that, the deal was off. And as picks 13 through 16 were defensive players as well, some of the top blue chip talent on that side of the ball was coming off the board. And by this point, in a pretty divided war room, half of the scouts were adamant about the team trading up with the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick number 17 to select another running back. Scout Walt Urowski was enthusiastic, saying Emmitt Smith will someday make Cowboys fans forget about Tony Dorsett. The Cowboys traded up with Pittsburgh, selected Emmitt, and the rest is history. James Francis had a very solid NFL career. He played and started 9 seasons in Cincinnati at outside linebacker and was a very productive player for a very long period of time. However, Emmitt Smith was Emmitt Smith. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year. He led the league in rushing yards 4 times in his first 6 seasons. He led the league in rushing touchdowns 3 times in his first 6 seasons, and set a then NFL record in 1995 with 25 rushing touchdowns. And 18,355 rushing yards and 164 rushing touchdowns later, he's a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, forever enshrined in canon. Without him, there is no Cowboys dynasty. Which is why it's so crazy to imagine Emmitt Smith being dangerously close to never being a Cowboy at all. The Cowboys had a deal in place to draft someone completely different, and were on the phone with said prospect. Had the Bengals not taken James Francis, who knows how NFL history changes. If Cowboy fans want someone to thank for their dynasty in the 1990s, thank Bengals general manager Paul Brown. Because if it wasn't for Brown spending the 12th pick on Francis, the footballing landscape as we know it may have been entirely different. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JarGator9 and subscribe to 60-second NFL history on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.